Good morning again, and welcome to Table Talk with Brenda Perryman right here on TV 33 WHPR, Comcast 90 in Detroit and Oakland County. And I am so excited about Table Talk today because we really have some very salient topics to speak of, and we have a call in also. I'd like to introduce my hosts or have them introduce themselves.
Good morning, Tamika Ashford, Public Relations Consultant for the Ashford Agency.
And good morning. My name is Robert Thomas. I'm the current Vice Chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals for the City of Detroit.
Good morning, everyone. Dr. Rose Moulton, clinical psychologist and author of Bloom, 7 Steps to Personal Transformation.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Morning.
Good morning.
And as on this day, which I do every week, it's become tradition. I know that today is Aaliyah Houghton's birthday. And Aaliyah, passed how many years ago?
It was 2001.
Wow.
2001.
About 14 years?
Wow.
Yeah, I remember being expecting my daughter who will be 13 in March. So
What I
it's been some
remember,
time.
what I remember is the fact that I met her. She came to a homecoming dance at Southfield with one of my students. He had been telling me about it, and none of the girls at the dance would talk to her.
Really?
And I went over, of course, and I talked to her and tried to make her feel comfortable. And it was all a matter of haterade.
Oh.
It was ridiculous.
And she was, I had the pleasure of working for her parents for 2 years, right out of high school in the summer when I would come home. And the family was wonderful, just
I
such
know.
a down-to-earth family. And they kind of just embraced and took me in, invited me to a lot of the events they would have. And just to watch her at the time, she was like 8 years old. So they would have put her on shows to open up for local acts, just getting her feet wet in the performing industry, and that's great. But it still hurts to this day to listen to one of her songs because she was really on an upward trajectory.
I was going to say I have her. I remember her also. I met her in Fairlane Mall. She kept winking at me. Yeah. So I was going to.
Did you give her your number, Robert,
Actually, I
or
was
what
going
happened?
over there and approach her
Okay.
to talk to her, and her
What?
bodyguard stopped me. So.
Okay. Did you give your number to the
Okay.
bodyguards to
I
give
couldn't-
to
I think
Aaliyah?
I ain't
No.
feel comfortable
What a
doing that.
memory.
Yeah.
My goodness. My goodness. Well, also, that was in 1979. That's when she was born. I got to go on with that. 1979 when she was born, and then Jolton in 1960. Jolton Joe Howard, WCHB 1440, popular R&B music on air personality, has bolted to rival WJLB 1400 as reported by the Michigan Chronicle. And we used to listen to Jolton Joe when I was a little girl. I know you all weren't around. And Dr. Haley Bell, WCHB co-founder, had recruited Howard from Atlanta and Larry Dean Faulkner from Nashville, Tennessee, to help him start the African-American owned and operating station only 4 years earlier. I mean, those stations were the bomb back then. I mean, we did not have the luxury of a lot of black stations and everything, which we could now. Now, yesterday we had an event, or we attended an event that was created and hosted by one of our co-hosts here, Cheryl Ajamu. It was the Multicultural Media Luncheon. It was just a great luncheon, and we have Cheryl on the line. And Cheryl, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I am recovering.
I know you are. I know you are. Well, I want to congratulate you on such a great event yesterday.
Thank you. Thank you. It turned out really well.
Can you tell the audience a little about what went on yesterday?
We had is there feedback or is it me?
Had a what? Could you speak
You're
up,
good. She
please?
said it's their
The
feedback.
feedback.
You're good.
You're good. There's no feedback.
Okay. Okay. Basically, we had an Academy Award style program that recognized various ethnic groups in the automotive industry. and we had a celebrity keynote speaker, Keith Clinkscales, who was instrumental in the launch of Vibe magazine, as well as creating the 30 for 30 documentary series with ESPN, and is now the CEO of Revolt Media and TV. So it was a good turn out. I'm sorry. It's got a lot of feedback.
Oh, well, we don't hear the feedback. We don't hear the feedback.
Okay, I want to hang up and call back. Is that okay?
You want to what?
She said,
I want
hang
to
up
hang
and
up
call
and call
back.
back.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. But it was a really great program, and she had a student introduce the keynote speaker, which was Keith Clinkscales, as she said, who's the CEO of Revolt TV. He also is he was one of the creators of Vibe magazine and everything, and he was very good. And there's something that he said that should go out to everybody, and that is, if you believe in your brand, be your brand.
Yes.
You know, be it, you know, live it. What did you get from it?
Absolutely. Not only when he talked about the brand, but just looking at the overall platform from the Ajima Group. One of the things that Cheryl talked about was her entire initiative going from 0 to 60 in 5 years. And I think that's important to look at, that when you're building your brand, when you're building your platform, it doesn't happen overnight. But when she launched this event, she launched with the Magic Johnson, and every year it grew. When you look at your sponsors from Toyota, from Hyundai, of course, her major sponsor, Hyundai, General Motors, involving the community, Cass Tech, Wayne State University. It was a very star-studded red carpet event. Awesome. I was very proud of Cheryl. Her team was excellent. People from all over the nation came in for this event, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen in 2016.
It was very, very well attended. As you said, it was
a full house,
sold out, and people got to meet a lot of people. And it's funny because there was a lady there from Atlanta, Alexis, and she said to me, she said, "I know you." And I said, "How do you know me?" She saw me on tour, and then I did the poem in a wedding of one of her best friends in Florida.
Yes.
I mean, so you never know.
Yeah.
You never know where I've been, guys. But Cheryl, we want to congratulate you and say bravo. We'll go on with the rest of our program, and if Cheryl calls back, we'll get a chance to speak to her a little more
and
about it.
We loved her red dress too. Hot.
Her dress and her hair, everything was just
at the Book Cadillac.
Book Cadillac, okay.
Yes, the Westin Hotel. Yeah, Book Cadillac.
Hold your mic up.
You've been chastised.
Well, okay, that's fine. Let's talk real quick. They've been talking a lot about what happened over in France and what has happened in different places, but they haven't talked a lot about the Nigerian massacre. And we saw, if you saw any of the pictures on Facebook, you saw so many dead over there. And I don't know why that hasn't gotten a lot of attention. I just don't know.
I mean, when I saw the images, Miss Perryman, I was floored. I thought it was something from 1800. I couldn't believe I was actually seeing something that took place in the 21st century. And I think it goes back to one of my initial statements. I think the regard for black life or African life is very little regard for that. Even when you look at what's happening here on a local basis, I just think people have very little regard for life of those that are African American or black.
Or African.
Or African, yeah. Of
Yes.
African descent, yes.
Yeah, I mean, the pictures were
Very
man,
grueling,
it was
yeah.
it was extremely grueling.
Excuse me, we have Cheryl back on the line.
Okay.
Let's finish up with her. Good morning, Cheryl.
Good morning. How are you? Sorry.
We hear you again, and we hear you a little better now than before. I hope you're not having the feedback.
No, it's good now.
Oh, okay. Well, we talked about some of the highlights, and could you tell us a few more things about your event And when is it next year so people could get their tickets early?
So, okay. The event primarily focuses on celebrating the achievements of ethnic groups in the automotive industry. I came up with the idea because my core business is securing advertising and sponsorships for national media properties from the automotive, from the automotive category, and I would meet lots of different people who are doing these great campaigns, or that were designing interiors, exteriors of cars, or different components, and no one really knew about them. And they were people of color. They may have been Hispanic, they were Asian, they were African American, they were from the U.S., they weren't from the U.S., and I just felt like that I could create something where they would get recognized. And that's how I came up with the event. And then I tied in the celebrity keynote speaker.
Can you speak up a
share
little
best
bit?
practices from someone who was not in the automotive industry.
Right, and there were a lot of professionals there, and his speech was really a metaphor for anybody.
Yeah.
There was great humor in his speech too when he talked about going to a HBCU and how he didn't realize he was at a HBCU until like I guess a week later or so.
Right.
Where am I?
No, yeah, that was
was
funny.
hilarious.
He was hilarious, yet he was a very, very potent speaker.
And
Yeah.
very hands-on too. There was a young man in the audience who had a question, how to get the young people involved. And he took the young man up on his offer. He said, "Young man, are you pitching to me?" And so he said, "Let's talk." And I saw them exchange information right after the program. So I was very excited to see that.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as we said, we just want to congratulate you on the air.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
I'm sorry I didn't get my selfie with you, Wonder Woman.
I know, Tamika.
I actually am in that selfie because Zafar showed
yes.
me. Zafar showed me. Said, "Look, we're in the selfie."
Is that the audience selfie you took? She took.
Yes.
Yes, yes. I said, "Oh my God, I wasn't ready."
Great
I wa-
idea. Someone on my staff came up with it, and they were like, "Oh, you should do a selfie with the audience." I was like, "You think that would be a good idea?" And then after I took it and I looked at it, I said, "Wow, I think this is my favorite picture of
That's
all
awesome.
of them."
Yeah.
And as much as we know you like,
Hello.
That's why. Did you hear me when you got up on the stage to take the selfie? I said, "You know you like selfies."
Yeah, and then you know what? I was afraid I wasn't going to like it, and I was going to say, I need to take another one. I was
Oh,
like,
Lord.
I'm surprised you did.
Well, once again, we miss you this morning, but we understand, and we're going to carry on with Table Talk, okay? And you have a wonderful time tonight at the gala.
Okay, thanks again. Thanks for the opportunity to call in. And I think it's usually the second week of January 2016. It should be January 14th, but usually, I don't know for sure until the auto show releases the dates. But tentatively, it's probably January 14th on a Thursday, 2016.
And I found, oh, by the way, I found out some very interesting things that we'll have to talk about next week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we'll see you then.
All right, thanks, ladies. Have a good day.
You too.
And Robert.
Gentlemen.
Robert's here with us too.
Oh, Robert. Oh, hey, Robert. Hey.
Hey, how's it going, Cheryl? I typically don't identify myself with the female gender, but I appreciate it.
Honorary today.
Okay. Thank you, Cheryl. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. So as we were speaking about that Nigerian massacre and how those photos made you sick, and how could people, this is the Boko Haram.
Yeah.
Those are the ones who kidnapped all the young ladies, and they also said that they had a 10-year-old girl walk into the marketplace, right? And a bomb.
The pictures were just devastating. I saw some photos of men, women, toddlers, kids. It looks like their skulls,
Babies.
were,
Yeah.
crushed, and it was just it was a crazy picture, and I'm kind of surprised the national media, international media, hasn't picked this story up like they have with the case in France where you had the terrorists.
They really haven't.
Because they are some homegrown terrorists that are terrorizing their own citizens in that area.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. They say it's over 2,000 people that they believe that they killed.
Right.
Which is
And then they had stories of survivors and the man who ran off into the woods, kind of like, but with one daughter, but he doesn't know where his mother and wife and.
That is just heartbreaking.
That's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I don't know what they could do about it. I just don't know.
But it would be nice to bring awareness about it. And I have not on the local or even national media front. And international, who knows, if they're covering it. But
it seems they're covering Paris and
yeah.
Belgium.
Well, that's the new thing.
Yeah.
I guess they consider themselves. They spoke about Boko Haram before. They don't have to attack it again. But I think it's up to us now to raise their awareness currently, so they can somehow pick it up here in the States. We keep seeing these photos rolling in, but we don't see this with national media coverage at
And
all.
we've seen this happen before in the past with incidents in Africa, where it's long after genocides have occurred that have wiped out, hundreds of thousands of people, that all of a sudden we're hearing the story as an aftermath. A year, 2 years after it's happened.
Absolutely.
So this is typical. And I wonder, I think it's two things. The lack of value, as you spoke, that may be on, lives of color. As well, maybe they don't consider them a common enemy, so to speak. With the incident that happened in France, we're so still hung up on our enemies, the terrorists or what, that we don't recognize or even give as much attention as we need to try to eradicate the terrorism that occurs in other parts of the world and right here at home, as Tamika said.
Yeah, you say common enemy. I'm going to say they don't have a common interest.
Yeah.
They're not interested right now in covering that until they're pressed to do so.
Right.
Press, and that's a key word. To
Pressed.
the press.
Yeah, and I did want to add to that. We're in the 21st century, so we don't necessarily have to rely on the traditional media. I think with social media, we can get the message across, from text messaging to, sending out our own videos. I think that the platform has completely evolved, and so we can talk about it in the barbershop, the nail salon, while we're out here running our 4 or 5K miles, as Dr. Rose does every morning. We can
Not
keep
every
that
morning.
conversation going, and so
I got
let's do
tired
it.
hearing about it.
Let's keep the conversation going as we're doing this morning.
Yeah.
We do have platforms with Table Talk, and I think back in the day when black folks were Negroes, we did a good job of doing that. And so I think we have
Spreading
to
the
go back
word.
and incorporate some of that old school system in place. And so if NBC or ABC doesn't pick it up, we're still keeping those lines of communication open.
We are the people of the
Absolutely.
griots.
Yeah.
We are the people of the griots. We can get messages across because something could happen and people know about it.
Yeah.
And this was before social media.
Absolutely.
We can find out where everybody's meeting, where do I go, and so forth. And I'm coming from a generation that is ahead of yours. And that's what happened. And we have to get more back into that grassroots thing.
Look at the civil rights movement. They didn't have social media and text messaging and
Cell
emails
phones.
and cell phones, and they made it happen. So we can still make it happen.
It was a better sense of awareness and togetherness back in the day
Yeah,
also
yeah.
that we have to recapture and within our
That's good.
generation.
And maybe even a sense of urgency,
Yeah.
Yes.
which there's not much of a sense of
The
urgency. There's
urgency of now.
of now, the urgency of now, because there's a sense of comfort. Most of us are able to go home to, able to go to our jobs, able to vacation, able to do things that we feel is the good life or what we, the American dream or what have you. But we have to understand on a global scale what we need to implement now as far as changes go forward, not just for us, but for the future generations, because there are some efforts to really just pull the rug underneath a lot of groups of people if we don't
Not
take-
only a lot of
Yeah.
groups of people, a lot of advances they're trying to take
Yes.
back, starting with the
With
voting rights
affirmative
bill.
action as
and
well.
Oh, affirmative action, that's been on the table for quite a while. And Ward Connerly, who started that, he's from California, but he came to Michigan, but that's another kind of history. But we have to be cognizant, and we have to be aware, and we have to be proactive and not reactive. We are reactive people
Yeah.
many times.
That's good, Miss Perryman. Can you talk a little bit more? I mean, being proactive, because we do react, and then when the next hottest thing comes, then we kind of forget what this part was and just go on to the next thing. And I think we have to be more strategic and stay focused. What are we looking at for 2015? I think, when you look at, and I hope no one throws shade at me, but with the sororities and the fraternities, I mean, back in the day, you guys were very much involved. I see you guys still doing some things, but as a whole, I just think as an African American community, we have to stay focused.
And have an agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
And,
main thing.
according to, this is something we were going to talk about last week. Oprah Winfrey said, there's no leader. And people are kind of, what is the mission? Back in the day, we knew the mission. We had particular things. We wanted voting rights. My mother didn't know anything about voting when she came up. They did not tell the black people. My mother just thought that these people just came into office. She was in the South and so forth. She was discriminated against because she got the highest score on the civil service test. She goes to Charleston to get her job, and they said no, it was another Pearlie Burgess.
Wow.
But first of all, do you know how complicated it was to pass that
is
test?
crazy.
I mean, those tests were very complex.
Well, it's just the point.
Yeah.
It's just the point. There was no fairness. And I see today, in many instances, fairness is taking a step back. And we'll talk about that shortly.
I want to add on to a comment you just made about the fraternities and sororities. I don't think people realize the actual power they have, especially as African Americans. The fraternities and sororities nationwide was able to pull sorority sisters off.
I
the
saw
air.
that, yeah.
They complained enough. They spoke with the heads in
Impressive.
charge. They started pulling the ads, and eventually they had 2 episodes of sorority sisters because it painted the fraternities and sororities in a bad light, particularly the sororities. And because of the ads was pulled, so was
Money.
the show.
Yeah, that's
Right.
impressive.
And I
But
think-
So
people
there's
came
power.
together like that.
Yeah.
And
Right.
people don't realize how much power they actually have. They
Yeah.
think, okay, I'm just complaining about something. No, you're not. You're actually adding some
And
value
the
to it.
power is in the pocketbook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Advertising.
And that's what
Advertising.
they hit
Money
it hard
talks.
with the
Money
money.
talks.
So
Money talks.
absolutely right.
Right. So let's go on to President Obama's community college proposal. And he made this proposal about the community colleges. What did you think of that? About paying for 2-year college?
I looked at it with mixed views. I'm happy to see that the president stepped up and to offer 2 years of college for free for individuals that have a 2.5 and above or stay at a 2.5. That was great. I think it should be there. It's been in Tennessee for a while. I think, as a matter of fact, this is their first year doing it in Tennessee, where you have 90% of the seniors there are going to community college, which is
Awesome.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's a phenomenal percentage. But the only drawback to that is I wonder how that's going to affect our HBCUs. And that's what my major concern was. You have individuals that barely have their 2.0 mark out of high school. They're going to colleges, HBCUs, and they're making it. But they're not going to see those HBCUs will not see the struggling HBCUs we have right now will not see those 2 years of enrollment monies going to those universities. So
That's a very interesting
Yeah, I
point.
never
But you
considered
know, the
that.
thing is with the community college, along with that, they should have, because you could get into a community college with a lower grade point average. And a lot of kids are discouraged from going to college because they don't get that grade point average. So they just nix it. At least if they could get that community college, start going to community college, learning how to study and so forth. I've seen people do much better in college, period, than they did in high
Absolutely.
school.
Absolutely.
because that's a different thing, different demands and so forth. I understand what you mean, and a lot of people are talking about that's government overreach, though.
I mean, but the whole point of government is to form a community that's going to be functioning
Right.
and that's
Yes.
going to be, well
the people,
educated
yeah.
and able to sustain itself. And we start doing that by getting educated. Robert brings up, I never considered that aspect, but what this does potentially is foster new partnerships where the HBCUs can partner with community college where, there are agreements that they'll take students
Absolutely.
on. I know some of the community college OCC where I go and speak at quite frequently, they have those type of relationships with some of the four-year universities. And so hopefully, there's a risk, unintended consequence of the risk of that happening, but they can I guess, lessen the blow of that risk by fostering these new partnerships or different
And
ways of-
another thing, high schools have relationships with these
Yes.
community colleges.
Lots of students.
Because a lot of our students have taken classes while they're in high school
Yeah.
over at the
Classes.
community
Yeah.
college.
Absolutely
It kind of acclimates them to,
Get college
College
credit,
yeah.
too.
nips
and-
away at those credits too.
right.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with that, and it kind of motivates them.
Yeah. I think what this does, many students, and that's probably the vast majority of students who ordinarily wouldn't have an opportunity to get higher education, will have this chance. I think for the HBCUs, the families who, we know there's a lot of legacy there. And so the families who kids have already, had their sights on going to one of these HBCUs, I think they'll still be going to the HBCUs, I'm sending a kid to college this year, and he has his sight set on the university. He's picked it out, researched it, said they have the best program that he's looking for, and it's out of state. I would love for him to choose something a little less expensive, but because I will be able to, thank God, to send him to college. I want him to kind of just merge where he feels is a good fit for him.
Absolutely.
But this is going to open up a lot of opportunity.
And then lastly, too, a lot of students don't know what they want to major in when they go to
Yeah.
college.
Not at
They
all.
don't know, they just know that they hear that college should be as something that they should aspire to. And that's something the speaker talked about yesterday, is getting an education.
Yes, and I think locally with Wayne County Community College District, I think Dr. Curtis Ivory does an awesome job, him and his team, with the continuing education program and developing that pipeline with the local high schools to the college. And I think, as Robert and Dr. Rose were saying, once we take that particular platform and add it with the HBCUs, we have a win. I think what President Obama is trying to do is he's trying to leave a legacy. What he has like another year or so in office, and so he's trying to implement these things. And I hope that people don't give him a hard time and let him do it. I mean, it's not unusual what he's doing. And when you look at the Constitution, there's something in there that talks about for the people. And if we're really for the people,
Small line
you
in
know
there.
what I'm saying? Then why is it a problem when we try to implement these types of programming?
For the betterment
Right.
of the people.
Right.
Let's move on. Let's move on. Oh, Robert, you were going to
No,
say.
I was going to say that I think that the opposers they really want the states to lead that charge instead of it
Okay.
coming from a national program.
Okay.
But it's a little too late. We let the states lead from that effort before. Now it's time to push forward.
implement.
When you look
especially
at
having
states-
a better middle class in the United States.
Yeah,
of
you
America.
look at some states like Louisiana where they're not even doing
Louisiana,
the medical.
Mississippi, Alabama,
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Arkansas.
as far as
Atrocious.
accepting the,
Yeah.
the
have
Affordable
atrocious,
Care Act. and
health. They have atrocious education. I mean, they're at the bottom, the pit bottom of the states, and I'm kind of surprised that they're also opposing their own best interests, which it baffles me when
Who's
people
the
vote
governor
against their own
there?
best interests.
Who's the governor,
And
Robert?
you have some conservative governors. there,
Well, you have a lot of
Yeah.
Republican governors who are pushing that agenda, and it's just not right. And I don't know why people don't get out and vote. People complain about it, and then there are those people who vote against their own interests. They cannot afford to have their child go to college, and this can't help them. But because I'm with this party,
And the whole point that he says he's doing this is because no longer can you graduate from high school and expect to even live a decent life.
Right.
So he's really bringing the point home that you need higher education. So like we pay for preschool, like we pay for elementary and second high schools, it's time for us to start paying for those 2 years post high school for students, just to give people the chance, a chance to have a
And
decent
so
life.
many people back in my day, if my mother had to pay for me to go to university, that would have been, she couldn't do it. And they had grants and scholarships for us. I think the first year at Eastern, my mother only had to pay $13.
Wow.
I mean, $13. Everything was taken care of. I mean,
Everyone goes to college.
yeah, you get a car, you get a car, you get a car.
13.
13.
Okay, let's move along, guys, because this is of local significance here about the Detroit Bistro owner who claims racism is prompting his eviction, and retailers downtown in a downtown site who face eviction after 30 years. And More Better Blues, the gentleman he advertised on our show, they are being evicted.
They've already
That
been
was so
Yes.
beautiful.
They are being evicted because I think they're going to put a pizza place in there.
Oh, wow.
I'm not
Well,
sure what they were going to put in there, but
It's a pizza place.
is it? It's already their windows is already papered.
Are you
Right.
serious?
Yeah,
So they're wasting
yeah.
no time.
It's crazy. They've been there less than a year, and typically amongst those contracts downtown, you lease for like 5 years.
Yeah.
How this the landlord actually pushed this forward so quickly, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure he rose the rent, and they probably weren't able to make it. But it's atrocious. Once again, what's happening in downtown Detroit, in Detroit, period. And we in the state of Michigan, I remember back in, I believe in the 80s, they had a rent control law within the city. In the state of Michigan, the state legislators eradicated that law and said no municipality can control businesses' rent or between tenant and landlord. You cannot control it. So when you talk about your midtowns, your downtowns, they're able to bring up their price at market value whenever they want to.
Exponentially. Well, they've
Yeah.
done it with the apartments.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
several people who have been, pretty much forced out of their apartments because rent has been raised upwards of 50 to 60% in just a year's time. Wow, that's amazing. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I had a chance to go to that venue.
Right, right.
And it was beautiful. I
They
had
just
no idea
opened up
that they were
last
closed.
They
been a
just
year.
opened up, and
less
they
than a year.
paid all. They used their money
$250,000.
Yeah.
to
Renovate.
gut it and renovate it and so forth. And now they have to go.
Under the same landlord owner, he knew what they were doing. He saw them pouring $250,000 into renovations for them to start operating. I believe they started operating somewhere in the summertime, and now just before the summertime, and now you have an eviction. It
So,
doesn't.
Robert-
Yeah,
It doesn't sound
From
right
a
to
legal
me.
perspective, any recourse?
I think they have some, but it seems like the landlords are willing to pay out versus going through
because he knows he's going to make
he's gonna
so
more
much.
money
Yeah.
off of it.
Yeah, I think they got a bad deal to begin with. I'm a firm believer in supporting black businesses. I know my organization, we held our holiday party there when they first opened up. And during that time, I spoke to the owner and his mom, and they talked about some of the challenges they had just right off from day one, even when dealing with the scaffolding that goes in front of the building. So number one, if I can't see that you're open for business, that's going to be a problem. And so things, I mean, that's a major problem right there. It's also my understanding that when he tried to pay the rent, the landlord would not accept it. And so, you look at these types of things and you wonder, is that happening down at the Red Place? Is that happening at the taco place? Is that happening at the Subway place? All of this is within the same block. Is that happening around the corner at Cliff Bell's? And so, these
Right.
are,
It actually is. What's happening is, and they're going to gain restitution. I believe they're going to they're going to end up suing. If they had a great
Good.
contract, they're going to end up suing
Yeah.
and receive some type of restitution out of that. Especially at $250
that
million
money in.
plus, they
For
put in
thousands,
renovations.
250,000.
Yeah, it just stinks, the whole contract. But what people don't realize is that in downtown itself, the property's been reassessed at $22 per square feet.
As opposed to give me
as opposed to what is it? What $10, $11?
Okay. Yeah.
Just a couple of years ago. So people were able to get this property for cheap. Now, these business owners, the landlords know that they can rent out these retail spaces for $22 a square foot. Yeah, they'll take that loss. They'll take that risk. They have a weak contract. You didn't get a good attorney. Look at that contract.
Didn't they have somewhere in there that they could get $50,000 a month
I saw some of these places.
from some of these
Yeah.
places?
Yeah. So,
50,000 a month. And then in the Hemahoe building, there are three
yeah.
black businesses.
That
They-
have been there for 25, 30 years.
30 years.
Over 30
You know,
years, yeah.
before it was, and I say this every time I have an opportunity, before it was even cool for other folks to be here, these were people who were committed to the city.
held it down.
And basically who held it down with their money, their time, and their years. And so I think just to uproot these folks, I think is very unfortunate. You see it happening in other cities and Brooklyn, New York, and I just feel like people who have been committed to this city should not be uprooted. And when they've given their money, their blood, sweat, and tears, and 25 to 30 years is a long time to invest in the city, and then just one day suddenly you're irrelevant, and so
Yeah.
you've got to go.
Because I'm just thinking of some local businesses now, and that I've always gone, like the shoe repair place down there near Campus Marshes. I've always gone
Yes,
there,
yeah.
and I'm wondering now, because this is a mom and pop shoe repair ran by a Jamaican guy,
Yeah.
very, very friendly, well known in that area, and you just wonder, because that's some prime real estate there too. Are these people just going to be pushed out, and these staples in the area are going to be no more? Is this just the unintended consequence
Consequences.
of
Unintended? I don't know.
I think it's well intended amongst the people who want to make money, but I think it's up to us now to hold our city legislators accountable also. So talking to council members and talking to especially the mayor's office, he has a director of hospitality, a liaison to talk with the downtown community. Why these discussions aren't happening right now, it baffles me. We could ill afford to have any more African American establishments downtown to move and have to shift somewhere
Yeah.
else. It's crazy. We have to have a presence downtown too.
So making, like Tamika said several minutes ago, Robert, like most people don't know that this person exists in the mayor's office. So putting the word out there, that, hey, let's send our concerns to this person, flood them. We know that there's power in numbers. And my other question, I guess, for all of you guys, okay, so we're being displaced. What next? Like, do we establish an area for ourselves where people know they can come, and there's minority owned businesses that we can support,
And we
Yeah.
call it Black Bottom
Yeah, I was
too.
just gonna say Black Bottom
Yeah.
Phase 2, and they talked about redeveloping the Livernois corridor. But why do we have to leave?
That-
That's my first thing.
right,
Why do I
right,
have
and,
to
right.
go?
and that's the thing there. That's
Well,
the-
what
why
I
do I have to
see,
leave?
I see it's about culture and the culture that they want downtown.
Yeah.
And I bet you, like some of these clubs have opened, like the Hopcat, that's in Midtown, and there's some other clubs
Please don't
that
get
are
me
open.
started with that. And Nolan Finley's "Where Are the Black People" commentary.
I know,
Please don't.
but he uses somebody else in that article to
But
talk about.
diversity is so important for any resurgence.
Any-
I mean, even all research shows that you have to have a diverse representation there. That really attracts people in.
It's not what we're used to in this region, though.
Yeah.
I mean, we're so used to being separate in this region. It's going to have.
Well,
to take some extreme
this is
outsiders
one of the
come
most
here to shake this up.
racially
This is
divided.
the
Yeah.
most.
Yes,
Yeah, in the country, you'd think it's somewhere in the South, but no, it's right here in Detroit, Michigan, where all you have to do is cross a couple of boundaries,
Yeah.
and you're in utopia and a state of devastation at the same time. So it's crazy, but the stuff needs to be attacked. I won't lay down just looking at this stuff. So
No, and that's why we have this, so we could discuss it and bring it to people's attention, because it's very, very important that we know what's happening, that we become proactive. I think we're reacting right now. We're at the reacting stage. We have to be more
Which is
proactive.
understandable because there's so much emotion tied into it.
There's
but it's
emotion,
time
but
to-
we
Yeah.
can't be like that. We have to see what we could do. So many buildings. I think Dan Gilbert's bought about 30 buildings
Yeah, you
now.
guys 40.
It's
Yeah.
40-something buildings.
40 something buildings. I mean, the owners of these buildings can decide what they want in each building.
And that's why when we do have African Americans, like the gentleman who owns the block on Woodward
Yeah.
with the Garden Theater,
Yeah.
and
Bird.
he owns that
Grill
entire
Mo-
block. That's
Grill
why
Motown.
it's very imperative that we
This- yeah.
support those type of establishments. And even with the Mo Better Blues, I know I had 3 events there. So here's the deal: when these businesses are open, we talked about the money. I think it's very imperative that we support those things. When we're looking at events, let's support the Roberts Riverwalk Hotel. I mean, there's a number of African American businesses that we have to support. And sometimes it gets down to the nitty gritty, and we're so busy running everywhere else. I'm not saying that we can't, but we need to always be looking. Is there an African American establishment that I can do business with when I'm going to drop hundreds or thousands of dollars? And there are some things to consider here in the metro area.
And some consortiums of black business people who could possibly buy some of these places. I mean, everything's being bought up. But see, this is something a lot of people didn't know. Remember the Palladium Theater in Birmingham?
Yes.
That whole block
down.
was bought by a black man.
Really?
Yes.
Tell us more.
I'm going to try to get a hold of him and have him on the show because he has bought that. A lot of people don't know
Wow.
that a
I know
black
he
man.
shut
Keep
the
it quiet.
Palladium
He
down.
shut it down.
Yeah.
He
Wow.
shut it down. So there are a lot of people out here doing things
Behind the scenes.
behind the
And
scenes.
then, sometimes my concern is you want to see your people do well and excel, but sometimes I'm always like, is there the front stage or backstage? So from a business perspective, if I bought a block, I would keep someone of non-African American descent on the front line because unfortunately in America, sometimes a community, if you will, feels as if an African American is the owner. There's some backlash. So in a situation like out in Birmingham, I would just let them think that the other owners still own it. That's
Right.
the approach I would take.
Yeah,
Right.
and you know what? We know that there's some truth to that. I also want to believe that competency speaks volumes as well. So
Yes.
I know, medical professionals who are minorities and they have a very diverse clientele because people know they're good. People know they're
Right.
competent.
Right.
And
Oh, that's with attorneys.
Yeah,
That's with
anything.
instructors. I've had so many people of all colors ask me about coaching, drama, and
Yeah,
so forth
yeah.
and so on if they think you're good.
And that's the point I make. When you start, and I think that speaks volumes because that's just, it's just a psychological norm for us to understand proximity and we're more comfortable with things that look like us. But when you are good at what you do, one of the telltale signs is that a lot of people, I can remember years ago getting a very traditional Muslim Middle Eastern woman as a client who family didn't even know she was in therapy, but she had heard about me and wanted to come and see me. And that to me spoke volumes. Like she was willing to put away a lot of just even maybe the preconceived notions she had about seeing someone outside of her culture, her religious group, and just wanted someone that could potentially help her.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk quickly about, there was that beating, the cops beating this gentleman for carjacking. Now, he did it at gunpoint with a woman who had her grandchildren in the car, and the police beat him down when he was handcuffed. Now, the woman that he beat down, she says it was fair because of what the guy had done. He held a gun. He could have shot the kid. I want to know your opinions on this.
As someone who's been carjacked, I agree with the woman. I'm sorry.
Don't apologize.
It's if I at that time and having to, because the carjacker at the time had a knife, and wanting me to get out of the car, but he wouldn't let me out the car, and I had to fight this person off and not fight him off and save my car, but fight him off so I could give myself enough time to jump into the passenger seat and escape the car. And that was traumatizing for years. I was a teenager at the time. And at this point in my life, I have a concealed weapon.
Got some heat, huh?
I have some heat. And if
All
you're
I
going
have
to
are
be,
this.
if you're going to be bold
I
enough
do.
to come and do something like that with my children in the car, you
Yes.
better understand. Now, again, I know police brutality is a concept in here, so that's something different. But from a personal basis, from a mother, perspective, I would have wanted to have a hand in beating his behind as well.
Right. Hold him down, cops.
Yeah. In my perspective, it'd be interesting to see what the attorney here has to say. But I'm with Dr. Rose. As a woman, see what happens is when you violate a woman, there could possibly be a consequence. And so, you think you're going to the weaker sex and attacking this person, you open yourself up for a beating. Now, I'm not saying that it was
And
right.
a beat down.
A beat down because it seems like that person didn't have a problem violating you. They didn't have a problem possibly, putting their hands on you. And so again,
But can I share this, please? Can I share this? Because this was something you said just sparked what happened when I was carjacked. So when the guy carjacked me, he didn't know how to drive a stick
did you
shift.
beat him,
No,
Rose?
I was a 16-year-old girl
Right.
trying to fight off a grown man, and he got in the car, and I was in work study, so I was outside of where I worked, it brought noon, 12 o'clock noon in broad daylight, and I'm banging on the door. They let me in. I tell them what happened. They run out there. He's still in the car because he doesn't know how to drive a stick shift. He
Good
pulls
for
his
him.
hat over his head, so people don't see his face. People come out there. They have axes. They have bats. They have everything. And eventually he figured out how to get it off in first gear and sped off doing 5 miles an hour. Basically it was just like a scene from some bad comedy. But when the police arrived, getting to your point, the police told the co-workers that if they had busted the window and injured this man, he could have sued the company.
Yeah, yeah. It's because he has rights too. Now I know everyone. You getting carjacked and out of emotion. You want to do something to this guy, and some lessons need to be learned out there. And I think this guy, this could be one of them when he was assaulted by the officers after the carjacking. Yeah, no one wants to have a gun pointed at him, especially no kids. That was people. Period. And heck, I would want to go out there and beat the guy up too. But unfortunately, with situations like this, he has rights too, and now he's a victim of police brutality. And back in the day, cops can get away with that, but not in today's age with technology
Cameras.
there and cameras. The lady recorded the whole thing, and it was some unnecessary kicks and punches that wasn't called for. You had the guy in cuffs. He did carjack an individual. Now he has to face the court of
Not
law
let it play
with
out
the
in the
judge.
courts. Yeah, that's true.
But like you said, he potentially could go and sue these officers, and that's the part that I understand the legalities of it, but from the human perspective, it's just like something about that just isn't right. Yeah.
Because, and Robert, you
What you
do
don't
say
want to have
that,
is vigilante justice, in which some cops do engage in.
right.
Well, we
right.
want to have it for the people who are just.
I want to
Yeah.
lead the posse.
I like the people who came out for Dr. Rose with the axes and stuff. I'm down with them.
Well,
Well, once again, it has to be a witness to actually witness that something happened to this guy and someone hit him and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
if you guys came together, I can't tell you guys.
no, I mean,
We'll talk about that off camera.
we'll talk about it off camera because we're going to have to wrap up in a minute. But having a gun pointed at you and your grandchildren or children, you talk about the emotion. Yes, there is emotion associated with that. And maybe I'm not as big as you, or maybe I don't have a gun, but I just want the worst for you. And I understand what she was saying also. And I know you're talking about the rights, but what about the rights of me to maneuver in the society safely?
And then unfortunately, you get leadership from the NAACP that, in many regards, I felt like somewhat defended. I don't want to say they defended the behavior, but there was great conversation surrounding, what the police should and should not do.
Oh, I hear the theme music, everybody. Well, we got to go, gosh. Always, always. Everybody join us again next week for Table Talk.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good weekend.